In the age of empires, there was one Caribbean city that everyone wanted. It was the gateway to the Americas, the treasure chest of Spain, and the city that shaped global trade. That city was Havana. But why did this port, perched on the edge of Cuba, become the jewel of the Caribbean? Havana was officially founded by the Spanish in 1519, although Spanish settlements had appeared on Cuba earlier. What made Havana different was geography. Nestled along Cuba's northern coast, its harbor was vast, deep, and naturally sheltered. Unlike shallow bays or exposed coastlines, Havana Harbor could fit entire fleets of ships safely away from storms. Cuba itself was already a strategic island, positioned like a giant stepping stone between Europe, the Americas, and the Caribbean. And Havana sat at the island's perfect crossroads. For Spain, this city would quickly prove to be more than just another colony. It would become the very hinge of empire. In the 16th century, Spain was draining the Americas of unimaginable wealth. Silver flowed from the mines of Potosi in Bolivia, gold came from Mexico and Colombia, sugar and tobacco poured out of the Caribbean. All of it had to reach Europe. But crossing the Atlantic was dangerous. Storms could scatter ships. Pirates lurked along sea routes. Rival European powers, England, France, and the Netherlands, all wanted a share of the New World's riches. Spain needed a secure hub where fleets could gather, resupply, and wait for the right winds. Havana was the answer. By the mid-1500s, Spain made it law. Treasure fleets had to assemble in Havana before crossing back to Europe. This meant no silver, no gold, and no sugar left the New World without first stopping in this Cuban port. Overnight, Havana became indispensable. Each year, the Flota de Indias, or treasure fleet, arrived. Ships came from Mexico, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. They carried silver ingots, gold coins, emeralds, hides, cacao, tobacco, and cochineal, a red dye so valuable it was worth more than gold by weight. In Havana, the ships repaired sails, took on fresh water and food, and formed convoys. When the entire fleet was ready, heavily armed galleons led the way across the Atlantic, protecting the wealth of Spain's empire. Imagine the scene. Dozens of masts rising above the bay, merchants bargaining on the docks, soldiers patrolling the fortifications, and sailors preparing for the perilous voyage home. Havana wasn't just a port, it was the lock on the vault of empire. Wealth this great needed protection. From the very beginning, Havana was a target. In 1555, French corsairs led by Jacques de Soré sacked and burned the city. That disaster convinced Spain to turn Havana into a fortress. The first major structure was the Castillo de la Real Fuerza, built in 1577. It was the oldest stone fortress in the Americas, with thick walls and watchtowers to guard the city center. Later came the imposing Castillo de los Tres Reyes del Moro, or El Moro, standing at the harbor entrance with its iconic lighthouse. In the 18th century, Spain added La Cabaña Fortress, a massive stone complex stretching nearly a mile. Together, these fortifications made Havana one of the most heavily defended cities in the world. Cannons lined its walls, soldiers filled its barracks, and its harbor bristled with naval power. Pirates and invasions, despite the defenses, Havana remained irresistible to rivals. English privateers harassed the treasure fleets. French and Dutch raiders circled the Caribbean. The greatest blow came in 1762, during the global conflict known as the 7 Years' War. A massive British fleet, backed by thousands of soldiers, besieged Havana for 2 months. The city fell, and for nearly a year, Havana was under British control. But the prize was too valuable. In the Treaty of Paris, Spain negotiated Havana's return, and in exchange, Britain kept Florida. The trade showed just how important Havana was. For Spain, losing Florida was acceptable. Losing Havana was unthinkable. By the 17th and 18th centuries, Havana was booming. It wasn't just a fortress, it was a jewel of culture, trade, and society. Its harbor teemed with ships from across the empire. Merchants grew rich from tobacco, sugar, and the slave trade. Wealth poured into the city, funding grand mansions, ornate churches, and plazas that rivaled those of Europe. The Havana Cathedral, built in the 18th century, became one of the Caribbean's most iconic landmarks. Music and dance thrived, shaped by Spanish, African, and indigenous influences. Havana became a melting pot, a city where cultures collided and fused, creating something entirely new. Havana was more than a port, it was a crossroads of the world. Ships brought enslaved Africans through its harbor, fueling the plantation economy. Sugar, rum, and tobacco shipped out to Europe. Manufactured goods and luxury items flowed in. Havana was at the heart of the so-called triangular trade linking Europe, Africa, and the Americas. Ideas traveled too. News of revolutions, religious debates, and cultural trends reached Havana faster than most places in the Americas. To many, the city wasn't just the jewel of the Caribbean, it was the center of the Atlantic world. But no empire lasts forever. In the 19th century, Spain's power collapsed. One by one, its colonies in the Americas gained independence. Havana lost much of the wealth that once fueled its prosperity. Still, Cuba remained Spain's last great colony. The island's sugar industry kept the empire alive longer than anywhere else. But in 1898, after the Spanish-American War, Spain finally lost Cuba. Havana passed into US influence, beginning a new and complicated era. Though no longer the hub of a vast empire, Havana kept its allure. American tourists flocked to its casinos and nightclubs in the early 20th century, drawn to its glamour and vibrancy. Today, Havana still bears the marks of its golden age. The old city, La Habana Vieja, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Its cobblestone streets and colonial plazas still reflect the wealth and culture of its past. The fortresses still stand guard, silent witnesses to centuries of conflict. Cuban music, from sun to salsa to rumba, continues to echo Havana's Afro-Caribbean roots. The city's architecture, though weathered, remains breathtaking. And for travelers, Havana is still one of the world's most fascinating destinations. For centuries, Havana was the treasure chest of empires, the crossroads of continents, and the most coveted city in the Caribbean. Its harbor sheltered fleets that carried the wealth of the New World. Its fortresses defended the gateway to the Americas. And its culture flourished in a way that still resonates today. That is why Havana was, and remains, the jewel of the Caribbean. Like and subscribe for more travel history adventures.